My son sold my house while I was recovering from surgery. He forged my signature, told the buyer I had dementia, and pocketed $340,000. He came to visit me at the rehab facility, smiling, asking how I felt. But when he walked into my bedroom and saw what was playing on the laptop screen, his face turned white as a sheet. 3 weeks earlier, I had installed something in the house. Something he never knew about. If you think the video footage was damning, wait until you hear the phone call I recorded. Comment and let me know where you're watching from. This story needs to be heard. The moment I knew my life had changed forever happened at 2:17 p.m. on a Wednesday in late September. I was lying in a bed at Rocky Mountain Rehabilitation Center, 6 days post-hip replacement surgery, when my son Kevin walked through the door with that smile. That perfect, practiced smile I'd seen 1,000 times before but never truly understood until that afternoon. He was carrying flowers, yellow roses, my late wife Dorothy's favorite. The gesture would have touched me once. Now it made my stomach turn because I knew exactly why he was there and exactly what he'd done while I was under anesthesia. "Hey, Pop." He set the flowers on the nightstand and pulled up a chair. "Looking better every day. Doc says maybe 2 more weeks and you'll be home." Home. The word hung in the air between us like smoke. "That's the plan," I said, keeping my voice steady. My hands were folded over the thin hospital blanket. The remote control for my laptop sat inches from my fingers. "Listen, Dad." Kevin leaned forward, elbows on knees, that earnest expression he'd perfected sometime around age 16. "Michelle and I have been talking. We think maybe when you get out, you should come stay with us for a while. Just until you're fully recovered. The house is going to be a lot to manage on your own." "The house," I repeated. 3 bedrooms, 2 floors, that big yard. It's a lot for a 74-year-old man recovering from major surgery. "We worry about you, Pop." I looked at my son. Really looked. The gray creeping into his temples. The soft middle he'd developed since taking that desk job at the insurance company. The wedding ring on his finger. Platinum. Expensive. Michelle's taste. "Kevin," I said quietly, "I want to show you something." I reached for the laptop and turned the screen toward him. His face went pale. "Let me go back 3 weeks. Let me tell you how we got here." I'd lived in that house on Maple Ridge Drive for 41 years. Built half of it myself, being an electrician by trade. Dorothy and I had raised Kevin there. Watched him take his first steps in the living room. Taught him to ride a bike in the driveway. Sent him off to prom from the front porch where she cried, and I pretended not to. After Dorothy passed 7 years ago, breast cancer, the house got quieter but never empty. Her presence was in every room. The kitchen where she'd burned approximately 10,000 batches of cookies trying to perfect her grandmother's recipe. The bedroom where we'd talked until 2 a.m. about nothing and everything. The garden she'd planted that I'd somehow kept alive through sheer stubbornness. Kevin had moved out at 22. Normal. Expected. He'd married Michelle at 28. She was pretty in a sharp way, all angles and ambition. They had a house in Cherry Creek, the kind of neighborhood where people compare lawn services and vacation destinations. No kids. Michelle said the world was too uncertain for children. Kevin said whatever Michelle said. For years, things were fine. Sunday dinners when schedules allowed. Christmas, Thanksgiving. The occasional phone call that lasted exactly long enough to satisfy obligation. I told myself it was normal. Kids grow up. They have their own lives. Dorothy would have known better. Then came the fall. Literally. I fell in August, tripped over the garden hose like some character in a sitcom, and landed wrong on my hip. The orthopedist, young enough to be my grandchild, showed me the x-ray and used the word degeneration 5 times. "You've needed this replacement for years, Mr. Brennan." The fall just accelerated the timeline. Surgery was scheduled for September 8th. "Routine," they said. "You'll be up and walking within days." I called Kevin to let him know. "Surgery?" His voice sharpened. "When? Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I'm telling you now." September 8th. "I'll need someone to drive me home afterward. Maybe check in for a few days." A pause. Muffled conversation in the background. Michelle's voice too low to hear words, but I caught the tone. "Dad, we'll be there. Don't worry about anything." They arrived the night before surgery. Michelle inspected the house like a real estate agent, running fingers over surfaces, opening cabinets, commenting on the original hardwood floors. These would refinish beautifully, she said to no one in particular. Kevin followed me around with a clipboard. A clipboard? Pop, we should probably talk about some practical stuff. Just in case. In case of what? You know, he shifted. You're 74. Surgery has risks. We should know where important documents are. Bank accounts, the deed to the house, power of attorney. Something cold moved through my chest. But I told myself I was being paranoid. This was my son. My only child. The boy I'd taught to throw a football. Everything's in the filing cabinet. Bottom drawer. Dorothy organized it years ago. Kevin wrote something on his clipboard. Michelle took photos of the kitchen. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed, the bed Dorothy and I had shared for 35 years, and I listened to them moving around downstairs, drawers opening, papers shuffling, voices too quiet to hear. At 3 a.m., I made a decision. I'd been an electrician for 47 years. I knew how to wire anything: security systems, alarms, intercoms, and cameras. Tiny wireless cameras that could hide in a smoke detector, a bookshelf, a picture frame. I had 3 of them, left over from a job years ago. I'd kept them because you never know. While Kevin and Michelle slept in the guest room, I crept through my own house and installed them. One in the living room, tucked behind Dorothy's ceramic angel on the mantel. One in my home office, angled at the filing cabinet. One in the kitchen, hidden in the plant that Michelle had called charming in a voice that meant the opposite. Connected them to the cloud storage account my neighbor's grandson had set up for me 2 years ago, password protected. Synced to my phone and the old laptop I'd bring to the hospital. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe I'd delete the footage in a week and feel foolish. I wasn't paranoid. The surgery went well. I woke up in recovery with my hip throbbing and a nurse telling me everything looked perfect. Kevin was there, holding my hand, saying all the right words. We'll take care of everything, Pop. You just focus on getting better. They drove me to Rocky Mountain Rehab the next day. Private room, physical therapy twice daily. The works. Expensive, but I had good insurance from 47 years in the union. Kevin said he'd check on the house, water the plants, bring in the mail. Don't worry about anything, he said again. The first 3 days, I focused on recovery. Walking with a walker, exercises that hurt more than the surgery had, learning to shower with a plastic chair and a handheld nozzle. Humbling stuff for a man who'd once rewired entire buildings alone. On day 4, I opened the camera app on my phone. The living room camera showed Kevin and Michelle sitting on my couch. A stranger sat across from them. Suit, briefcase, documents spread on the coffee table. I fumbled for my earbuds, hands shaking. Won't be a problem, Kevin was saying. He's in a facility. Early dementia. Doesn't really know what day it is half the time. The stranger nodded sympathetically. And the power of attorney is in order? Michelle slid a document across the table, signed and notarized. My heart stopped. I had never signed power of attorney. Never. The house is appraised at $385,000, the stranger said. Given the market and the condition, I can offer $340,000 cash. Quick close. No inspections. We accept, Michelle said before Kevin could open his mouth. I watched my son nod. The recording had a timestamp, September 12th, 4 days after my surgery. I watched the footage 3 more times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Maybe the anesthesia had done something to my brain. Maybe this was some fever dream. It wasn't. I switched to the office camera. Different day, September 10th. Kevin alone, sitting at my desk, a stack of papers in front of him. He was practicing something, writing the same thing over and over on a legal pad. My signature. I zoomed in. Harold Brennan. Harold Brennan. Harold Brennan. Trying to match the loops and slants of my handwriting, a skill he'd apparently been developing. The third sheet looked almost perfect. I couldn't breathe. Literally couldn't pull air into my lungs. A nurse rushed in when my monitor started beeping, checked my vitals, asked if I was in pain. Just a nightmare, I managed. Just a bad dream. But I was awake. For 2 days, I did nothing. I lay in that bed and watched the footage, over and over, cataloging every detail. The date on the documents, the realtor's name badge, Michelle's casual laugh when she talked about my dementia, the dementia I didn't have. I thought about Dorothy. What she would say, what she would do. She would have burned the world down. My wife was a small woman, 5'2", gentle voice. But when you threatened her family, she became something else entirely. I remember when Kevin was 12 and a teacher accused him of cheating. Dorothy had walked into that school and emerged 30 minutes later with an apology letter and the teacher's commitment to retirement. "You don't let people take what's yours, Harold," she'd said on the drive home. "Not ever. You fight." I decided to fight. The first call was to my attorney, Arthur Webb, 81 years old and still sharper than most lawyers half his age. We'd been friends since the 70s. "Harold, shouldn't you be recovering?" I told him everything. The footage, the forged signature, the power of attorney I'd never signed. Silence. Then, "Can you send me the videos?" "Already did. Check your email." More silence. I heard him breathing, a slight wheeze he'd developed over the past few years. "Harold, this is fraud, forgery, elder abuse. If what you're showing me is authentic, and I have no reason to believe it isn't, your son and daughter-in-law are looking at felony charges." "I know. Is that what you want?" I stared at the ceiling, the water stains that looked like coastlines, someone else's geography. I want my house back. I want him to know that I know. I want him to understand that he cannot do this to me. "All right," Arthur said. "Here's what we do." The next 2 weeks were a performance. I played the recovering old man, shuffled through physical therapy, complained about the food, asked the nurses what day it was, even though I knew perfectly well. I let Kevin and Michelle visit, let them bring flowers and empty words, let them talk about the future while I smiled and nodded. "The house is fine, Pop. Don't worry about it." "That's good, son. That's good." Meanwhile, Arthur was working. He'd contacted the real estate company. The sale was scheduled to close on October 2nd, 2 weeks away. The buyer, a tech worker from California looking for a Denver investment property, had no idea he was purchasing a house from someone who had no legal right to sell it. We had to move carefully, document everything, build an airtight case. I kept watching the cameras. September 19th, Kevin and Michelle in the kitchen, packing boxes, my boxes, Dorothy's china, the wooden clock my father had made, photo albums. "Should we keep any of this?" Kevin asked, holding up a picture of Dorothy and me on our wedding day. Michelle barely glanced. "Put it in the donation pile. We don't have room for clutter." Kevin hesitated. For just a moment, something flickered across his face. Then he dropped the photo in the box with everything else. My wife's memory. Donation pile. I zoomed in on my son's face and tried to find the boy I'd raised. The one who cried when our dog Max died. The one who hugged me so hard on his wedding day that I thought my ribs would crack. That boy was gone. Maybe he'd never existed. Maybe I'd invented him the way lonely fathers do, seeing what they need to see. September 25th. 1 week before closing, Kevin came to visit alone. Michelle had a thing, he said. Spin class or brunch or whatever it was she did. He sat in the chair beside my bed and talked about nothing. The weather, the Broncos, a new restaurant in Cherry Creek. I let him talk. My laptop was open on the bedside table, screen facing away from him, connected to the hospital Wi-Fi. "Hey, Pop." He leaned closer. "The doctors say you're doing great. Maybe ready to leave soon." "That's what they tell me. We've been thinking. Maybe you shouldn't go back to the house right away. Too many stairs. Too much space. What if you came and stayed with us for a while, just until you're really recovered? And then we'll figure it out. Maybe an assisted living place. Somewhere with people your age. Activities. Nurses on staff." I looked at my son. My only child. The boy I'd worked double shifts to send to college. "Kevin," I said, "let me show you something." I turned the laptop toward him. His face went white. On screen, Kevin sitting at my desk, practicing my signature. Over and over, getting better, getting good enough. When he stood up so fast, the chair fell over. "What is that? Where did you get that?" I didn't answer. I clicked to the next video. Kevin and Michelle with the realtor, the power of attorney, the $340,000 offer. He's in a facility. Early dementia. Kevin's own voice, clear as day, selling the story that would erase me. "Dad, sit down." Something in my voice. He sat. "I don't have dementia, Kevin. I know exactly what day it is. I know exactly what you did. I've known for 2 weeks. Let me explain. No. The word came out sharp. Decades of authority from job sites and union halls. You don't explain, you listen. I told him about the cameras, about Arthur, about the fraud charges that were currently being prepared, about the real estate company that had been notified, the sale that would not go through, the buyer who would learn exactly why. You tried to sell my house, the house where you took your first steps, the house where your mother died. You practiced forging my signature. You told a stranger I had dementia. You put my wife's china in a donation pile. Kevin was crying, actual tears running down his face. I felt nothing. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Michelle, she kept saying we needed the money. The house was wasted on you. You'd never know the difference, Michelle said. And what did you say? Silence. I've lived 74 years, Kevin. I've buried my parents. I've buried my wife. I've seen a lot of things. But I never thought I'd see my own son steal from me while I was unconscious on an operating table. What do you want me to do? I'd thought about this. For 2 weeks, lying in that bed, watching those videos, I'd thought about what I wanted. The sale is canceled. Arthur has already handled it. The forged power of attorney has been reported to the police. There will be an investigation. What happens with that is out of my hands. Dad, please, I'm not finished. You will return every item you took from my house. Every dish, every photo, every piece of furniture. You will have 1 week. After that, I'm filing a police report for theft. Kevin nodded frantically. Yes, of course. Anything. And Kevin. I waited until he looked at me. Don't come back. Don't call. Don't send Christmas cards. I'm 74 years old. I may have 10 years left. I may have 10 months. However long I have, I'm going to spend it with people who see me as a person, not an obstacle to inheritance. Dad, I'm your son. You were my son. Today you're a stranger who tried to steal my home. He left. I heard him sobbing in the hallway. Heard a nurse ask if he was okay. I stared at the ceiling until the sounds faded. Then I called my neighbor, Linda, 72, widowed same year as me. We'd been having coffee together every Sunday for 6 years. Nothing romantic. Just two lonely people who understood each other. Harold, how are you feeling? Better. Much better. Linda, I need a favor. She picked me up from rehab on October 1st. Drove me home in her old Subaru. The house looked the same from outside. Same blue shutters Dorothy had chosen in 1995. Same cracked driveway I kept meaning to fix. Same maple tree turning gold in the front yard. Inside was different. Emptier. Kevin had returned most things, but there were gaps. Spaces where objects used to be that he'd either kept or lost track of. Dorothy's ceramic angel was back on the mantel, slightly chipped now. I set her photo beside it. It'll feel like home again, Linda said, putting groceries in the refrigerator. She'd stocked it before I arrived. Milk, eggs, bread, a rotisserie chicken. Give it time. I stood in the living room, leaning on my walker, looking at the walls I'd painted myself, the floors I'd sanded and stained, the windows Dorothy had hung curtains in. It already does, I said. The investigation took 4 months. Kevin and Michelle were charged with forgery, fraud, and attempted theft. Michelle hired an expensive attorney and tried to blame everything on Kevin. Kevin, to his small credit, refused to let her. They both pleaded guilty to reduced charges. No jail time, but felony records that would follow them forever. The real estate license Michelle had been working toward, gone. The insurance job Kevin had, gone. They sold the Cherry Creek house and moved to Arizona. I heard from a distant cousin. I didn't follow up. Word got around the neighborhood. The nice old man on Maple Ridge whose son tried to steal his house. People I hadn't spoken to in years stopped by with casseroles and condolences. The local paper did a story. Denver senior catches family fraud on hidden cameras. The reporter called it an inspiration. I just called it survival. Linda started coming over for dinner instead of just coffee. She taught me to cook things Dorothy never had. Risotto, pad thai, a surprisingly good vegetarian chili. I taught her to fix the electrical issues in her old house. One evening, 6 months after everything, we sat on my porch watching the sunset turn the mountains pink. Do you miss him? Linda asked. I thought about it. Really thought. I miss who I thought he was, the boy in the photos. But that boy was partly my invention, wasn't he? I saw what I wanted to see. Dorothy always said I was too soft on him. She was right. She usually was. She usually was. We sat in comfortable silence, the kind you only get with people who understand what loss feels like. My advice to any parent listening is simple. Love your children, but watch them too. Trust, but verify. Don't confuse obligation with love, and don't confuse love with blindness. I spent 41 years in that house believing that family meant forever. I learned that family means showing up, means treating people with dignity, means not practicing forging signatures while someone's recovering from surgery. Blood doesn't make family. Behavior does. I'm 75 now. The hip works fine. I go for walks every morning. I have dinner with Linda 3 times a week. I joined a woodworking class at the community center. Turns out an electrician can learn to build things too. Kevin sent a letter last month. Apologies. Explanations. A request to talk. I threw it away. Some people will say that's cold. That forgiveness is divine. That he's my only son. He was my only son. Now he's a lesson. If this story touched you, tell me where you're listening from. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe. Your support helps stories like mine reach people who are going through the same thing right now. Remember, it's never too late to choose yourself. It's never too late to install cameras. And it's never too late to fight for what's yours. Thank you for listening. And thank you for reminding an old man that his story matters.